We have to grieve a loss. In many instances, it's a loss, a relationship that went bad, a toxic relationship, a situation where a person has been mistreated or abused. And it's important in that work to strengthen a person's ability to discriminate past from present. What happened to me 20 years ago is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What happens to me now is not what happened to me 20 years ago. Different people, I'm a different person. So there's work that can strengthen the ability to separate past from present. You know, past is sneaky. It piggybacks on the present without being known. It's like, shh. I'm controlling the present. Future doesn't do that, you know. Future tends to stay at a distance, right? But the past is dying to be a part of the present. And it's very important in life to differentiate those two.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Men on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Ian Lobos. Look, today we're going to get deep, real deep. And I tell you every time, I want to make sure you know that you are going to get value out of this thing because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want you wasting your time listening to some shit that you don't need. On this episode, we're getting deep, psychologically deep, brain wiring deep, trauma deep. We're getting deep. And the psychiatrist or psychologist and psychoanalyst that I have on, Dr. Thomas Jordan, he is going to do so much deep diving very quickly. It's almost like a deep dive buffet and into the human experience of love and intimacy and grief and patterns and traumas and validation and sabotage and all the stuff that you guys are going through. All of us are going through. And so let me give you a couple of things that we're going to go over. I'm going to tell you about Thomas Jordan, and we're going to roll. So what is needed to have a good relationship? We're going to talk about what love actually is, examples of sabotage. We're going to talk about consciousness, willingness, independency, control, experience of life, and the psychology that goes around it. We're going to talk about changing your love life by changing your psychology. We're going to be talking about thoughts that are healthy and unhealthy. I'm going to be talking about helping people who suffer and helping yourself as you're suffering, sharing your emotions with your child and the benefits and the dangers there, starting on your journey of self-healing, kindness, your professional life being high and your personal life being low. A lot of you guys are going through that, and we're going to get really deep into that. We're going to figure out what wakes people up from their old patterns. We're going to deal with loneliness, wasting time, the importance of intimacy, getting trust back in a relationship with yourself and with others. We're going to talk about caution and paranoia, letting go of the past, the opposite of love, and why schools should teach love and grief, in addition to a ton of other stuff. So let me tell you real quick about Dr. Thomas Jordan. He's a clinical psychologist, psychoanalyst in a private practice in New York City. He's on the faculty of NYU's postdoctoral program in psychoanalysis, the author of Learn to Love, A Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life, and the founder of the Love Life Learning Center. Dr. Jordan specializes in the treatment of unhealthy love lives, and he's been studying them for over 30 years. This conversation is awesome. You're going to get so much out of this. Like I always do encourage you, I'm going to encourage you to get a pen, get a paper, stop what you're doing, chill out, and just take notes, because something in this episode, it's designed to hit you the way it does. Right? You're designed to notice it. So when you're listening to these, don't worry about everything. Be non-distracted and available to pick up that one big thing that makes a difference in your formula, or maybe two things. So remember, you want more information? Do you want to get a hold of me? You want to get more help? Do you want to be a part of what we've got going on? Everything we've got is at the Men on Purpose world, which is menonpurpose.net, menonpurpose.net. You can find out more about our Men on Purpose community. You can join one of our masterminds, which are self-paced, and they've got group coaching element to them, and they're freaking powerful. You've got our retreats that are starting to come up. You can get really deep deep, deep, deep work done in a very fast amount of time. So if you're sitting there going, man, I need this and I need this quick, our retreats are perfect for that. And we've got all kinds of free giveaways on our website, right? We've got our purpose-driven formula, little mini course and ebook. We've got an assessment coming out soon to know how to go from replaceable to irreplaceable. And if you are a replaceable person, all kinds of cool stuff. So join us. We love having you here. Super appreciative of all your love and support over the years that Men on Purpose has now been around. And we're here for you if you need us. Okay. Enjoy this episode. Okay. So we're going to get into some deep stuff today. And I'm really excited because, as we were explaining before I started recording, this is so many men out there. My practice, your practice, we're dealing with this issue, and you and I used to be those guys. So let's go back to that place when you were that guy who was driven by the career and starting to have misfires in the personal life. How would you describe that, by the way? How would you describe that time of your life?
Well, I started out taking care of my mother emotionally. I was one of 4 sons. I was her confidant. She would talk about all the emotional issues that she was struggling with. And it kind of grew from there, you know. I mean, I'm not sure she was a successful treatment case, but the point is I became interested in the emotional life and so on. And it went from there to hospital jobs and clinic work, and then graduate school, postgraduate, and private practice here in Manhattan. So a lot of my life was spent really ambitious, working towards goals in the profession, maximum independence, big practice, writing books. And then when I got to about 31, 32, in my personal analysis, somebody pointed out to me, what's going on in your love life? And I've what I call a disappointing love life. The evidence was there, relationship after relationship, nothing really deep enough, nothing enduring enough, disappointing endings. And at one point, my analyst said to me, it looks like you're using a lot of what your mother taught you in your love life. And I was like, what? And my mother, she taught me 3 things about eligible women. They're dependent, controlling, and self-centered. And she was struggling with those qualities herself in her life. And that's the kind of woman I ended up with over and over and over again. Disappointment after disappointment. So when I realized that, I started really understanding that in order to have a relationship, I had to work on my love life. And that's an important statement. Work on your love life. Instead of feeling like it's just something that happens automatically, I began to look into it. I've been studying and treating unhealthy love lives for over 30 years, and I've reached a conclusion that most of us are not in control of our love lives. And what I mean by control is understanding what the issues are that replicate and dominate. And what I realized, which was a very important realization, both in my personal life as well as professional life, is that what I had learned about love relationships in my life, starting from the beginning, unconsciously, that's important, unconsciously, was dominating my love life, and it was unhealthy, what I had learned. So becoming conscious of what I had learned and beginning a change process became very, very important. And that's when things changed. I'm now a happily married man of 28 years. My wife is also a psychotherapist. She in the office next to me, and that's as a consequence of making changes. So I came to the point I realized I want to write a book that people can use, simple, direct, use as a guidebook to begin the conscious work of looking and working on their love lives.
When you say love life, are you talking about love in general, love of others, love of self, love of your job, love of anything? Or are you talking about sex?
Yeah. In the preface of the book, it's an important statement. I say, this book is not about love, that unpredictable, uncontrollable, wonderful emotion. Who knows where it comes from?
Right.
That we human beings can experience. No. This book is about love relationships, the relationships we form when we fall in love, healthy or unhealthy. You form a healthy one, you grow love. You form an unhealthy one, you stifle and destroy love. And unfortunately, there are plenty of people, and I was seeing them in my practice over and over again, that destroy love each time they fall in love.
Like self-sabotage?
All kinds of sabotage. In fact, I listed 10 in the book. I got 12 now. Things like abandonment, abuse, neglect, rejection, self-centeredness, dishonesty. These are relationship experiences that we can have in life that teach us unconsciously lessons that get replicated. We recreate experience over and over again by what we've unconsciously learned. And just the list kept showing up over and over and over and over again. And if you ask me, what's a definition of love life? What kind of definition are you using? I would say love life starts the moment you're born. Any and all relationships involving the emotion of love teach you things about love relationships. And that learning, unconscious learning, simply from experience, can be replicated over and over and over again in your love life. And if it's healthy, fine, man, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. You're going to replicate what's healthy. Beautiful. If it's unhealthy, I'll give you an example of how conscious it is. A woman shows up in my office, early 50s, initial intake, talk about the history and so on. She tells me, grew up in a home with alcoholic father, abusive man, physically abusive guy. Me and my sibs watched it happen, my mother getting beat up. Okay, take the history. What's going on in your love life now? Well, I divorced 2 men. Oh, by the way, they were alcoholic and abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And my boyfriend is an alcoholic and he's starting to get abusive. And I asked this question: do you think there's a relationship between where you grew up and what's going on in your love life? And I'll never forget the look she gave me. What?
Sounds so simple, doesn't it, though?
Yes, simple, but these familiarities, and I like to think of that as a kind of dirty word, family's in the middle of it. It can be a good word or a bad word.
Yeah.
Familiarity can be very unconscious. And when it is, the learning is in charge of the experiences that we have over and over again. We shape them. It's a realization about people that I'm fascinated with. We're very creative beings. I mean, look at the room you're in.
I know.
How many people created the various items in that room or my room? Plenty, maybe thousands.
Yeah.
We also create mentally, psychologically. And to understand what we're creating from a psychological perspective, imagine how powerful that is. Yeah. And I think learning is the fundament of that. Learning is the foundation of that.
What's up, guys? I'm so sorry to interrupt the episode. I just need 1 minute to share with you all the new and exciting, amazing stuff we've got created here at Men on Purpose. First of all, thank you for listening to the podcast and supporting the movement we're creating for all the men of the world. Next, you've got to check out our new website, menonpurpose.net, where you'll find all kinds of cool stuff, including links to our podcast and the free Men on Purpose community. You're also going to find our new free purpose-driven formula mini course and ebook, and links to all of our new coaching programs and products. Look, I've had so many of you ask me where to get started with your personal growth journey or where you can go to level up. So I put this thing together, this free ebook and mini course, and we're going to be talking about and coaching you through a really light version of our purpose-driven formula, which is our foundational formula. And for those of you who are ready now, we got you. Listen up, whether it's becoming the best husband, being the best dad, quitting that job that doesn't serve you, or just understanding how to put you first, we've got what you need to align with your authentic self and find that true fulfillment and live a life with no regrets. Look, we're helping men with structure, support, and sustainability. That's what you've asked for, and that's what we deliver. As we lead you through proven and tested curriculum that focuses on formulas to help you get farther faster. So make sure you go to menonpurpose.net, click the button to download our free, powerful, purpose-driven formula mini course and ebook. And while you're there, make sure you check out some of our amazing products designed to help you find your purpose, stop self-sabotage, and dial in your mindset, skills, and habits to evolve into the best version of you. Why? Because we want you to live and have the best life possible. No regrets. So, menonpurpose.net, let's get back to the episode. What about so it makes sense that there's a replication of, alcoholic father, alcoholic boyfriends and husbands, and there's no foundation set. It's just one to the next, to the next, to the next. That makes sense.
Like it's what people are attracted to without knowing why.
What about the opposite? I want to get your take on that. What about someone that grew up with an alcoholic, abusive father and is now naturally attracted to someone who's calm and just very serene? Or what about someone who had a very calm and serene, father, but is now attracted to someone who's crazy? How does that work? Because that's not something we talk about a lot.
No, I think there's lots of variation, and the patterns aren't rigidly set. I've met plenty of people who have recognized the abuse that has taken place in their early life, and they dedicated themselves to not repeating it. And they didn't.
What's the difference in that person, though? What's the difference there?
Okay. Now, my personal professional opinion is consciousness. I think consciousness is an incredibly powerful phenomenon. When we see something, we can do something about it. We don't see it, we can't. So the first step in my book, I call it the unlearning method, right? The first step is always, it's a 3-step process. The first step is always to become aware of what you've learned about love relationships. That awareness permits you to begin to see what has to change. And it's a powerful issue, a powerful function. It's a wonderful asset. And there are plenty of people that come to that consciousness casually. They come to it naturally, not necessarily in therapy or counseling. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a human thing. That's the way I look at it.
And then there are those people that still may be conscious of it, yet they're not willing to do something about it. Is that why you see someone who's
willing is will? You introduce will. Will is decision.
Yeah.
Will is deciding not to for whatever reasons, and there could be psychological reasons people don't want to do anything about it. For example, I mentioned the word familiarity. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the world that when you ask them, what's going on, who taught you about love relationships? My family, good or bad, that's my family. That's what I'm going to do, period. End of story.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you got to that point in your 30s, let's go back to that place. What happened in that space? What happened in your head? What was happening in your life?
Yeah, well, the shock of hearing my analyst, who was a pretty upfront guy, liked to get into the confrontational aspects that are involved in like denying reality or whatever thing floats your boat, he'd jump in, and I loved him for that, and so when he pointed out, hey, you're using mom, and that was a bit of a shock, and the good news was that he introduced the idea that something was learned. So I felt like, okay, that's a user-friendly concept. Like we learn from the beginning of life, like if it's learned, it can be unlearned. But I had to deal with this issue. Like what did I learn and how did I learn it? So it became a self-study supported by my work in treatment to understand what I had learned. So I backed off of relationships for a while, dating. I grew up in a family with 3 brothers. I have no sisters. So the funny thing happened to me, I gravitated towards female friends. Yeah. And it almost felt like an internship. Like I had to study women, and I had to differentiate between women who are dependent, controlling, self-centered, and the opposite. Like, where are the independent, not controlling, intimate women who are not self-centered or narcissistic, So it was 5 years long, and I had a very close female friend, no romance, no sex. We hung out together. Maybe she was a pseudo sibling or something that I added to my experience. But at the end of that period, it's funny thing. I knew my wife, Victoria, for 6 years. She is independent, not controlling, and intimate. And she showed up. She called me. We started to date. She moved in. We lived together for a year and a half, and then we got married. I've been married 28 years. I have a kid, 24 years old, a son. And I changed something in my head that made receptivity to a different type of person who was, I'm not saying bad things about dependent, controlling, and narcissistic people. They're just not ready for relationship.
Sure.
Right. I'm talking about people who are ready for relationship. When you become ready for a relationship, it's a change of venue. It's something that changes in your brain, in your mind, in your spirit. And I guess Victoria and I, we knew each other for 6 years. She could have married somebody else, but there was still something, curiosity there. I don't know. And she called, and that was it. We started up.
That's super cool. Yeah. I love how that happens. I want to ask you something I was thinking about. I listened to the podcast, How I Built This, on NPR. It's not on NPR. It's an NPR podcast.
Uh-huh.
And there's a common pattern when these giant moguls and these category disruptors or category inventors of these people invent these categories or break these categories open. There's this common pattern that they were motivated by something that their parents did, and it locked in at like 8, 10, 12 years old.
Ooh, cool.
So when you talk about you changed your mind, are you talking about neuroplasticity, or are we talking about some basic stuff? Are we talking about the real deep chemicals, wiring, when you say you changed your mind?
Well, my preference, my tendency is to stick with the psychology. I think psychology is up and coming. Neuroscience is beautiful. I'd like some more answers about the relationship between psychology and neuroscience, but I'm a psychologist and a psychoanalyst by training. My interest is in understanding how the psychology of a person creates their experiences. And interpersonal relationships are a big part of that. I think there's a lot of work to do there. I mentioned just a little while ago the creativity that's largely unconscious and how that can really structure a person's life. People shape experiences that are unhealthy over and over again. They recreate them. I use that word a lot in my book. They recreate the disappointing love life over and over again, and they don't know why. It shows up in the repetition of disappointments. It shows up in this unconscious replication, as if the past learning experiences are like blueprints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, in fact, in my book, I introduce the concept of the psychological love life to really put people's focus on what's going on inside their psyche. You know, it's interpersonal process is cool. It's really wonderful. It's beautiful. It's great stuff to talk about. But I want people to change their love life based on changing their psychology, because the changes they make there are permanent and involve the work you do on yourself. That's where I think the fundamental changes in a love life can take place. And again, the beautiful thing is it's a learning experience. So learning is super, super friendly. When you talk about learning, people don't feel stupid. They don't feel like, you're talking about some abstract stuff.
Sure.
It's real. Okay, unlearn. In my unlearning method in the book, I talk about consciousness, step 1, understand what you've learned. Step 2, challenge it. We have a wonderful capacity to have 2 thoughts in mind at the same time.
Yeah.
What we've attached to and the thought that it's unhealthy. And it produces what I like to think of as a therapeutic conflict, right? It's like, okay, I'm in the stage now where I've been practicing something that I learned early in life that's unhealthy. I didn't know it was unhealthy. And now I got a new idea in my mind that's saying, this is unhealthy. Even though mom taught me it, it's producing bad results. I have to change it. I have to confront the fact that it's familiar and I'm attached to it. That's a wonderful precondition to change that a human being can have psychologically, whereas that therapeutic conflict. Step three is to correct it. And correction occurs when we seek the opposite experience. If we grow up with neglect and abandonment, which too many people have suffered early in life, and find unavailable partners or partners that abandon them or they abandon, which can be a lesson that they've learned from abandonment. So the point is, the opposite is commitment. So devoting oneself to commitment and attachment, understanding what does a person that possesses the capacity for relationship commitment look like, feel like, sound like. And when you interest the person in that and they seek their opposite, then you're giving the tools to a person to shift their love life in a new direction. That's what I did. I found an independent, not controlling, intimate woman. And she was unfamiliar. To me. Made me anxious. Broke new ground. Told the shrink, oh God, I met a woman. I'm nervous. She's going to move in. Like,
what were you nervous about? Were you nervous that you couldn't handle it?
Okay. How about living as a bachelor, right? Running a clinic in Queens, plenty of money. I had a great life. I'm out of graduate school. Finally, no more noodles for dinner. It's like, I like, and I'm in my 30s, women around, and I wanted to have a good time. So here I fall in love, and my bachelor pad on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Okay, she's moving in. And I'm telling my shrink, this makes me nervous. He asked that question, what makes you nervous? I say, she'll hurt me. You know what he says? And this is a classic line. I think it's in my book. I tell people that I love this classic line. He says to me, where did you get the idea you could be in love and not get hurt?
That's true. That's a really great line, actually.
Shit. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been defensive and trying to control this situation for so long so I won't be vulnerable. And this guy's telling me I got to be vulnerable to be in love. And then the idea pops in my mind and we have a conversation about it, that what I need to feel is a faith that I can heal the hurt when it occurs. If I have a faith that I can heal the hurt, then falling in love is not so scary. And that's what I worked on. And it worked out. We fell in love. And it's not been perfect, but it's endured 28 years and I don't plan going anywhere.
What's interesting is I totally ADD'd out when I was asking you that question before. On the how I built this podcast, these people that have made major movements, right, in the world, in business, who don't have the experience and didn't set out to do that, they all have a pattern where they reference a childhood experience that completely changed them. And I remember listening to Rick Steves, specifically Rick Steves, the travel guy.
Okay.
And he said his dad was a piano tuner, and they went over to Europe to go to the factory because his dad was going to start importing and distributing these pianos. And he remembered how much he felt trapped because at that point in the 60s, the child's passport was embedded into the parents' passport. So children didn't have their own passport. And all he kept thinking as a young boy, right, as like 10 years old, let's say, was when I have my own passport, I can go anywhere I want and I won't be under this tyranny, so to speak.
Right.
And that entire thought process still is his obsession today. And the guy's running $100 million a year enterprise. And it was that thought process that he said was the turning point. And he said any chance he got, didn't matter what he had to do. When he got that passport, it was a passport to freedom, and
Absolutely.
Europe
Yeah.
was the freedom. And so
Uh-huh.
I think about that when you described in the beginning of this conversation, the challenges and the things you had to do with your mom and the things that you learned. Of course you're gonna, that's your wiring. Of course you're gonna seek that out, right? You think
Uh-huh.
that's normal. What was what were your thought processes in that? Are you, I'm imagining you were a kid, right? You were young when you were dealing with that
Absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah. Is that
I
what still just continues to motivate you and motivated you
well,
through school and all
I
that?
wanted to help my mom.
Yeah. That's what I
She
mean.
was suffering. She was unhappy. No one else was listening to her. She couldn't talk to anyone else about what she was going through in the family. She felt controlled. She never separated from her parents. They lived upstairs.
Oh,
Grandfather had a family business. My father worked for him, and she was embedded. She was the only daughter. 5 siblings died in childbirth and in miscarriage, and they held on to her. You
yeah.
can't leave. These are first generation. My parents are first generation from the Azores Islands.
Yeah.
And it was like, my grandfather was a totalitarian fellow,
Yeah.
the suspenders, the straw hat, the two-tone shoes. Like, yeah, we come to America. He made a good life for the family. He had some cash, but he controlled his daughter and kept her in one place, and she suffered from that. And I was the one she spoke to. So I guess what was happening to me is I started becoming interested in the emotional life of people, like to understand it. I
Yeah.
started reading psychoanalytic books when I was a teenager. I mean, it's like, I hid them up in the attic. Like I think I felt a little bit of a guilt feeling. There's a phrase for that experience. I became aware of it later in life, in my professional life. It's called parentified child. When a child is given responsibility to parent, it's called parentified child. So as my mother's confidant, my mother's listener, I was sacrificing my own needs, but I was also providing her with emotional support.
Yeah.
And in my personal therapy, I had to become aware of how I had to get my needs back. That was a very big psychological task that I had to reestablish that in adulthood. But in a way, I learned how to be a therapist early.
Is it healthy to share your feelings and emotions with your child? Like, where's the line of you're giving them way too much and they're going to traumatize them, or behind the line, which is it's healthy to share this with them so they understand that you feel this and you can help them feel their stuff. Where's that line? Is that healthy in general?
How you share it, what you share, questions like that would answer your question. If you're sharing it because you're dependent and self-centered, it's unhealthy. If you're sharing it to teach your kid about life and you're not asking anything of them, that's different. That's parenting. Pretty deep stuff to teach our kids about emotion and the mind. So, but that was not the condition. My mother was needy, dependent, suffering.
Yeah. And what's interesting is I've been a huge Howard Stern fan for my whole life. He talks a lot about that when he's not joking around, when he talks between those lines, he tells you how much his mom dumped on him and shared with him about her. Dumped is a good word, right? That's the operative word. Dumped on him and put that pressure on him to try and help her because she was so depressed and she felt like she had nothing going on in life except for this one role that she was failing at. Yeah. And there's so many women out there. I get to deal with I'm dealing with their husbands in my business. And there's so many women out there that feel that they don't have anything else except for this identity that was created for them. Granted, wife and mother was their choice. However, what does that person do? Right. You can't dump on your kids, and you gotta love yourself enough to go get help in therapy. What does that person do? What's a step-by-step that person could do to start their journey of self-healing or self-realization?
Well, they have to recognize that there are emotional experiences that are telling them separation is needed. Because if you have a family that's predicting who you are, what you're going to be, they're not leaving much room for your individuality, which is fundamentally unique. The greatest gift you can give your kids as a parent is a recognition of their unique individuality. And, instead of rushing in to tell them who they're going to be and how they're going to be it, you wait to receive some kind of information from your kid about what turns them on, where their true self is located. So that process, I had to separate from my family under parental duress. My father was more supportive. My mother was not. My mother was upset when I left home. I left home at 20 to go to college. I never came back. She was upset. She was losing her confidant.
Yeah.
My father, who I got real close to because we were fishing buddies, he recognized that I needed to leave home and go to the college of my choice. And that I did. And he supported it. As I was leaving, I could only think, oh God, what kind of hell is he going to catch for that particular, the help he gave me. Okay, Dad,
Yeah.
Well, behind closed doors must have been tough for old Dad.
I'm sure. And was there a point in your career where you just, like we were talking about earlier, where you realized I've achieved so much, yet my personal life just, I want you to kind of go back to that. Like my personal life just isn't there. What is going on with me?
Yeah, that was the 30s. In the mid 30s, I had reached a point where I recognized that relationship and companionship was missing from my life. I had pretty much everything else except that. And when I was doing this work that I've described to you in therapy, it kind of helped me go in the direction of realizing that I had to change something, some kind of expectation, that relationship and companionship are really on a different track than having fun, sexual one-night stands, have fun, drinking, partying, nightclub life, all of that good stuff. But I reached the point in my middle 30s where I wasn't interested anymore. And I had friends that were kind of focused on that kind of life, work for the weekend, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the women and the people that frequented the places I would go to, I started to look at them a little bit differently. And I withdrew from that and began thinking about, meeting people that were a little bit more substantial in their interests. I think people are along a continuum. It's almost like some people they move slowly, takes time, they play in their 20s, they get to their 30s, they start thinking about relationship, or they get to their 40s. 40s is a great decade to make changes, I realized a few years ago that I have a lot of people in the 40s in my practice, if you want to put it on a graph, 20s, 30s, 40s.
It
the
is
middle of life,
I think it gets to like, I'll be 40 in December. And we're getting to this place that I'm helping a lot of guys out that are around my age. And I feel like I've broken through so much stuff. I broke through that stuff in my 30s. And I see this pattern of dependency on other people, on substance, on exterior things in a lot of people in their mid 30s to mid 40s. How does somebody, like what you're talking about is you're partying, you're drinking, you're having fun. And then all of a sudden you go, this got to change.
Yeah. And if I could answer that question, my God, a TED talk would come right away.
Yeah.
I think that's a particular experience for a particular person, like why people wake up and how they wake up and what makes them wake up. It's really hard to say it always happens this way or that
It's got to
way.
be pain, right? It's got to have some kind.
Well,
It's got to have something to do with pain.
Pain is one thing. Loss, need, words like that probably fit in. Repetition, doing something over and over again till it's terrible. And it's like, repetition in and of itself shows you're stuck. So that can be a mover and shaker right there. I think there's a readiness concept that's not easy to define.
Sure.
When I was ready for a relationship, there was a seriousness about it. Like I didn't want to be alone anymore. I had 2 cats in my apartment. That was not good enough. And I have nothing against cats. I'm a cat lover, but or the faithful dog, I mean, come on. It was an interesting change of mind. Loneliness might be a part of it, letting loneliness become part of one's awareness.
And being okay with it.
Okay with it and learning from it. It's like, what does my loneliness tell me? I try to distract from it. I numb with substances, like you mentioned, big problem, because when you're numb, you're not feeling. No. Feelings are important. You got to use them. They're information.
What about trading loneliness from the party scene? Like somebody says, I don't want to be lonely, so I'm going to stay in the party scene. Yet the party scene, they know they're not into anymore, yet they don't want to be lonely. Right. So there's this, I've talked to a couple of guys over the years that say it's really hard to break free from this cycle because this is like, they're like my family. They're filling this massive void. I know I need different. I know I want different. I know I deserve different. Yet it's so hard to leave the party, so to speak, with these people and these activities. And if I do that just to follow my own dream and passion, I'm literally letting all of that go, and I'll be lonely out in the sea by myself, having to figure it out on my own. And they won't leave because of that, yet they know that they have to, and they're just stuck in this resistance.
Yeah. If I had such a person in my office, say, in a therapy, what I would do is listen carefully to how they are trying to address their loneliness in that party lifestyle, so you understand it. But my attention would go to the word different.
Yeah.
You said, this guy says, I keep that going because I don't want to be lonely. I know I need something different. See, when you said that statement went, whoa.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say, wait. What's different? What is it? What do you need? And help that guy focus on that word. I want verbiage. I want words. I want you to tell me, what do you need that you're keeping on the periphery? I want the guy to say to me, all right. I need a woman by my side. I need a man by my side. I need life. I need a life. I need people that think about me when the night's over, that come with me, that sleep in my bed. I need intimacy.
Yeah.
And that words like that. Now I'm saying, okay, look, let's land on that. I know you want to do this party stuff. That's fine. Okay, come in, continue. But when we get done studying that word intimacy, he's not going to want the party life. He's going to say to himself, holy crap. I mean, I really see the difference. That word difference has grown and grown and grown and grown. And the motivation to look for intimacy is grown. It's like, okay, where is this intimacy? How do I find it? Who can provide it? What's the difference between this person and the party person? Questions like that. Now we're doing the type of study that empowers people to say, okay, I'm going to stop wasting my time over here and I'm going to look for this intimacy. Let me join a club. Let me do what I like and meet some people through that. Let me see if I can find the different people, the people that think about substance and relationship and are not numbed out from alcohol or drugs. Let me do that. And that's where I would go. It's like building something. You're building a person's awareness of the importance of intimacy. And they give you a little sign by saying that statement. I do want something different, but I still need to practice that playful stuff. Okay, let me focus that statement you just made.
How about people that how does someone get that self-trust in them to actually trust themselves to make that move and know they're not cutting off what looks like a lifeline, and then actually pursue this thing because they feel it in their bones that this is the right way to go, yet they're terrified to be alone, but they know that they don't want to spend the rest of their life doing this. So how does someone gather self-trust or just trust in general?
Well, I believe it's a process. For example, I would also question, aren't you alone in your party life?
Yeah.
I mean, look, man, I can drink all night and be alone. I can be surrounded by people and be alone.
Sure.
I can be dancing on a dance floor and be alone.
Yeah.
I could sleep with somebody and they go home and I'm alone.
Yep.
So these, it looks like these people are satisfying some need for others. But in reality, what's really being talked about is intimacy. Intimacy is the cure for loneliness. That's the cure. Intimate relationship where you're sharing something, you're sharing a relationship with another person that loves you, cares for you. It's a mutual thing. It's intimate. By the way, the intimate relationship is the best relationship to grow love. Think of love as a plant. The intimate relationship. When I came up with the 12 different relationships that teach us bad things in life about love relationships, I realized that, and I talk about this at the end of the book, I realized that the opposites, when you list the opposites, all those opposites provide a nice comprehensive definition of the intimate relationship. Free, respectful, committed, devoted, mutual. These are honest. These are all words that they provide markers to understand what an intimate relationship feels like. So it's very interesting. The opposite of some of these unhealthy experiences is really a wonderful concept. Correction comes when we seek the opposite of something we've been able to identify as unhealthy.
When somebody breaks trust, whether that's in themselves or somebody else or like their intimate partner or whatever it might be, can you get that back? And I'll give you an example. When there are guys that come to me and say, when we're talking about sabotage, self-sabotage, and they'll say, every time this happens, I go out and do this, or I go out and get a drink, or I go out and use this external thing to avoid dealing with the real stuff I'm supposed to deal with.
Uh-huh.
And what's happened over time is that trust has been eroded and they almost don't trust themselves anymore. And the same thing I find has happened in relationships is that they've done so many things so many times that the trust in the relationship has been eroded. It's not that it's gone, it's that it's been eroded and reinforced that it's not solid. Is there a way to get trust back in oneself and in one's relationship?
Getting trust back takes work.
Yeah.
Number one. And I'm not going to sit here and insult people's intelligence by suggesting it's an easy one trial process, and it's not. Trust, the loss of trust is often based on fear, is often based on an anticipation of hurt. We become attached to things that are unhealthy and begin to remain in place because it feels like too much of a risk to do something else. I mentioned earlier that, to trust that you can be in a relationship and get hurt if it happens, because a relationship is uncontrollable. You can't get into a love relationship and control it. So you're taking the risk. You're trusting your own abilities to survive if it's hurtful, if it leads to disappointment. So that faith that we can handle risk is going to be an important part of reestablishing trust, whether it's trust of another person. Sure. I love you, and I'm trusting that you're going to be in my life. We've set this up. We got property together. We got married. We're living together, whatever. When I come home from work, I want to trust that you haven't like ripped me off, taken all my bank account and left town, I mean, and I have to be at work saying, okay, this person's not going to do that. I can focus on my job, or trusting oneself, which is also a form of trust. Can I be in love? Can I open my heart to this relationship, to this person, and trust that I can handle it? Yeah. That it's not going to kill me. It's not going to destroy me, that I can heal, survive, get through it. It's a process.
What happens when someone does get hurt? Their bank account does get raided by the partner, and while they're at work, how do they not go into, like, a lot of stuff that we discuss is kind of these stories that we tell ourselves around what happened. And this story that we live with, which doesn't have any validity or evidence, it's just based off of this thing that happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it is, or yesterday. How does someone protect against that story that, oh, it's going to happen again? I can't trust anybody. You hear those people, those naysayers that go,
right,
listen, you can't trust women. They're all crooks. You can't trust men. They're all assholes,
Right. No, the one I hear is all men are dogs.
Yeah, right.
All men are dogs.
Right.
All women are bitches and controlling. That's those are two common, but that one's well, look, now you're talking about the psychology of caution. And of course, if you take that along the continuum, you get to paranoia. That's when the reality that's involved is really starting to come apart. Yeah. So caution in the middle sphere of this, caution is self-protection. In my book, I talk about what's in the psychological love life, that blueprint we keep that shapes our relationship, what you've learned, the experiences that have taught you, and the defenses you've learned to cope with the possibility of hurt. That's also included. And people have all kinds of defenses. Common ones are being in a relationship at a distance, being in a relationship fighting all the time so I won't be vulnerable, armored, if I'm fighting all the time, I need a suit of armor, or avoid love altogether to protect myself. Some people do that. Some people, they have a more sophisticated defense, like, I'm going to be in a relationship and I'm going to change you and make you the kind of guy you need to be in this relationship. Or I'm going to substitute partners and find that ideal partner I'm totally 100% compatible with, one after another. Not on this planet, by the way. And then, of course, there's the multiple relationships at the same time, which I tend to feel is a defensive measure because you're not letting any one person deep enough. So it tends to spread out the intimacy concerns. So these are ways we protect ourselves. The problem here is that people can be so mistrusting that they're devoted to these defenses. And when you try to work on your love life, it's going to be hard to see the other two parts to the psychological love life, what you've learned about love relationships, the experiences that have taught you, because those defenses, those self-protective things we do are notorious for blocking out any change in your love life. If you're working on your partner, you're not working on yourself, for example.
How does somebody let go of the hurt or the pain or the stuff that they've experienced in the past when they're experiencing a new situation, or they're experiencing something new in a relationship, how can somebody let go of the past so that the past doesn't keep filtering into the present and flooding the lenses of how they're looking at the present moment?
Exactly. That tells me, when I meet someone with this particular concern, it tells me there's some healing that needs to take place. More specifically, we have to grieve a loss. In many instances, it's a loss, a relationship that went bad, a toxic relationship, a situation where a person has been mistreated or abused. And it's important in that work to strengthen a person's ability to discriminate past from present. What happened to me 20 years ago is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What happens to me now is not what happened to me 20 years ago. Different people, I'm a different person. So there's work that can strengthen the ability to separate past from present. You know, past is sneaky. It piggybacks on the present without being known. It's like, shh. I'm controlling the present. Future doesn't do that, you know. Future tends to stay at a distance, right? But the past is dying to be a part of the present. And it's very important in life to differentiate those two. And what happens when people do that work? Here's the hard part. They grieve automatically. Why? Because that happened long ago and it's gone. I lost that. By keeping it in my present, I'm not grieving. I'm reenacting. I'm replicating. But when I push it there in the process of healing it, I'm going to grieve. And that's good grief. Very good grief, because that's the healing. The grieving is the healing. You know, I in my book, I make a little side point, but I love it, and I think a lot about it. The opposite of love, people say, hate. Hate's sick anger. Forget hate. The opposite of love is grief. You love somebody, you can lose somebody. They can die. They can fall out of love. The risk we take when we love someone, the vulnerability we experience is grief.
Yeah.
When it's time to grieve someone you've loved, it's like love turned upside down. The more you grieve for someone, the more you've loved them. Grief is as natural as love. Unpredictable, uncontrollable, but we can do weird things to it, just like we can do to love.
Yeah.
That make our lives unhealthy. In fact, if you would ask me, what can I do about this? I would suggest the school system in this country make room to teach people about love relationships and how to grieve. Because in this life, you will be faced with both of those. And if you don't know what the hell to do, it guarantees misery. Grief unresolved is the origin of so many symptoms in patients I've worked with. I've been in this office and worked with a person grieving for someone that they lost 30 years ago.
Wow.
Like that grief has been sitting in the closet,
creating. So that 30 years, it never changed. They're still feeling it like it was the
never
day they
changed.
Lost.
Absolutely. Imagine that.
And they don't feel.
They're weeping in my office, crying in my office about grandma who was a surrogate mom who died when they were 20 years old, 19, 15, and how important that relationship was. And they never grieved it. It was too painful. So they put it away.
Is that because parents just aren't teaching kids how to grieve? Obviously, we're not
Uh,
learning it in school, or is there a natural ability to know how to grieve, or do we need to be taught?
I think that it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
If you have a culture where there are rules to grieving, you have to consider those, like grieving in the middle of your job when your boss is trying to talk to you.
Right. Right.
I know what I mean. But I think grieving, I mean, we grieve as soon as we show up on the face of the earth.
Fair.
The first emotion we have when we're born, we grieve the loss of the womb. We grieve the detachment from this wonderful place we've been in for 9 months.
Yeah.
So grief is very much part of the emotional life of human beings. I got a little story for you. Someone from your neck of the woods, right? In 1972, Leo Buscaglia, ever heard of the name?
Nope.
Okay. Wrote books about love and learning. Leo Buscaglia, emotional Italian guy, a lot of feelings, right? Wonderful teacher, doctor of education, I believe. University of Southern California. Oh, a girl in his class, young lady in his class, commits suicide over a love life issue. He's distraught. He goes to the administration, 1972, says, I need to teach a love class. My students don't understand love. They laugh at him. Leo, come on. Don't you have better things to do? Love, please. He persists, he persists, he persists. Okay, Leo, you can have a room, no credit. So he teaches it for 4 years. 100 students each class, standing room only.
Wow.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think the University of Southern California has a love class on their curriculum in 2022?
I certainly hope so. I'm
bet
thinking that they don't. I'm thinking that they don't.
Come on. I mean, 100 students, standing room only. It brought tears to this man's eyes. The first class he taught, he said, I don't know if I can teach you about love. I don't know if I can do it. We'll do it together, he said to them. We'll learn together.
Yeah.
He was so moved by the interest. People are interested in love relationships, grieving. These are issues that have such an important part in our lives.
I totally agree. Well, look, this has been a really great. I got 2 pages of notes here that I wrote. This has been a fantastic experience for me, and I know for the audience. So I just want to just give you such gratitude. Really appreciate you being here and giving us so much expertise. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a good time. I love your interviewing style, the spontaneity of it, the free associative aspects of it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. We'll tell first before I forget, where can people find your book?
On Amazon.com. If you put the whole title in, you get to it easily. Learn to Love, Guide to Healing Your Disappointing Love Life. It won 5 book awards. I'm really happy with this self-published little book that I wrote. I didn't know it showed so much interest. Also, I have a website, the Love Life Learning Center. It's not Love Life Learning Center.com. I put it up in 2012. I wanted it to be a library where people could go and read some very real articles about love relationships. I have over 300 articles on there right now. So it's interesting that I think there's a lot of people that give me commentary off the website, and I really love it. I learn a lot over the years from those commentaries. So, yeah.
Well, I would like to. I'd like to extend another invitation to come back, because I think you and I could talk about some depth in some of these topics we covered.
Absolutely.
I think we did a nice buffet today.
Absolutely, please. Yeah. I'm going to give you my personal email. I think you might have it already.
I'll get that after we wrap this. I'll grab that, and then we can talk more about it. So look, I just want to thank you again for being here, and to the audience, thanks for listening. And remember, you can find everything you need, show notes, everything about Dr. Jordan at menonpurpose.net. And remember, guys, be purposeful, become irreplaceable. We'll catch you on the next one.